Digitaler Unternehmermut, der Podcast zur digitalen Transformation für Macher.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of our podcast Digitaler Unternehmermut with Niklas and Michael. Today it's Michael only and I'm speaking with a special guest. This is Carlos Pierre. He is founder and CEO of Badi. Badi is a Barcelona-based platform that uses machine learning to match tenants, roommates, and landlords based on preferences, personalities, and interests. He has raised $45 million so far, very successful startup. And of course, in the middle of the Corona crisis, we talk about the impact of the crisis to his platform. But moreover, we're talking about how to successfully start a business and run a business and scale a business, how to find the right people to do so, how to find investors, what are the challenges to do so. And Carlos has really a lot of insights and learnings for entrepreneurs, young and old, in order to succeed, grow, and win in the marketplace. And it's a very special interview and podcast. Listen in and enjoy. Hey, we have Carlos Pierre here, the CEO and founder of Badi, and thanks very much for joining us today on the podcast. It's interesting times, challenging times for all of us, but let's start off before we talk about Badi and how you came there. Your target group for Badi is fairly young. It's about sharing apartments, sharing homes. Can you foresee a time where all ages or age groups see the benefit of sharing things?
When we started 5 years ago, the average age was 23, and today it's 32. So this is not because of Badi, but it's what is happening in the room rental, mid to long term room rental market or flat sharing market, and this is because every year we are 80 million additional people on Earth. Earth is not becoming bigger. So basically there's more density, and then basically what happens is that rental prices increase, and there's a highest percentage of the population that cannot afford to buy or rent an entire flat. So we always say that in the next 50 years, we're going to be 2 times more people on Earth. So we will have two solutions. One can be colonize another planet, or the second one, share the space that we have. So we expect that the average age keeps growing every year. Of course, there's a limit to it, but yeah, we expect that grows a little bit more than 32 years.
Do you think this has to do with the kind of jobs changing towards more nomads and going away from these large corporations? People are more independent, also where they live, where they work. Is it a trend which you benefit from?
So it's probably 50% of necessity, which a lot of people, they cannot afford to buy or rent an entire property, and also the other 50% it's lifestyle. So right now we are way more nomads. I think it's way easier to move from one city to the other. Also, it's about culture right now. We are more like mentally ready to just move faster from one place to the other, one city to the other, try new things. And also, like millennials, also they have this different culture compared to past generations, where we are more nomadic, and this is of course helps our business in this case. But I think Badi makes a lot of sense also in cities where we see a lot of demographic changes between cities.
I can see that actually. I mean, you've started in large cities, but before we dive more into Badi, let's go to you. I mean, you've worked at PwC. You've founded the company with a lot of passion and a lot of success. How did you get there? I mean, what motivated you to start Badi?
Yeah, so I started working at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I learned a lot, and I don't regret working there, but I didn't like it, and it's because it was super basically we were following a super standardized methodology. It was different companies, but pretty much the same every day. And I've always thought that I wanted something different, that I have, I think, the kind of personality that probably wants to create things, new things, and probably also to own my own business if I can, of course, or at least work with people really passionate, that they have this freedom and ability to do their own thing, right? So I basically I was living like 20 minutes away from Barcelona, but I worked at Barcelona. So I started searching for a flat to rent, but I realized that with my budget, it was impossible to rent an entire property. So basically, what I did is start searching for flat shares, and I realized that all the supply was managed by classifieds, and that's has been the standard thing for the last 10 years, right? Those classifieds are doing a good job. It's basically functional. You have liquidity, you have volume, but the user experience it's not that good. And also with the technology that we have nowadays, it was difficult for me to not think about how to easily improve the user experience of classifieds. So that's how the where the idea came from. And I spent there at price like 1 year and a half, and then I already started with this idea of creating kind of a marketplace only focusing on flat shares and adding the social component, which is something that classifieds don't have, and it's the component that adds trust and the social aspect that makes it more personal and mainstream, right? So we had this idea at the beginning of creating this like Tinderized flat sharing app. So basically, at the beginning, it was similar to Tinder. The methodology, you were accepting or rejecting profiles. Right now, it has, I think, improved. So you have an inbox, and the model it's probably more linked to what we know as a rental marketplace like Airbnb, for example. So that's how we started. I mean, I'm not a designer. I'm not a developer. So what I did is I had a friend of mine who knew how to design. So I was going every night at his house, and we were designing the first screens one by one. Once we had the designs, we sent it to an external company for the development. So they were charging us 15K, which it's something that I didn't have. So basically, that was my first friends, family, well, probably only friends and family round. And it was a round of 30,000, which I closed in around 2 months. So once I had the money, then the external company started to write the code, and then after it was launched for iOS and Android, basically I had 15,000 euros to spend on marketing, and that's how we started.
That sounds great. I mean, this is definitely self-made. When you started that way, this was in 2015, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I had the idea in March 2015. I had the designs probably, it was April 2015. Then we launched iOS, Android, September 2015.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about your experiences. Our podcast. The name is Entrepreneur Courage. I mean, you had a lot of courage to start off that way. Tell us a little bit about your experiences in the beginning. I mean, how did you feel? I mean, what did you do? What did you learn? Where did you fail? Where did you succeed?
Yeah. So basically, at the beginning, I didn't know anything about how to just launch an app. And so the first step was just literally just having an app that was launched for iOS and Android. And then the second step was to see people using it. And then the third one was to see people really like renting rooms, right? So at the beginning, there was a lot of unknowns. And I think what I did well, it's I had a friend of mine who also invested in this first round, and a friend of him also invested, but I didn't know him. So basically, the two of them, also besides investing, they started helping me, and we became a pretty good team of 3 people. And right now, I consider them as co-founders, and also one is interim COO right now, and the other one is chief people officer, right? So I think one of the things that I did correctly, because as only one founder, sometimes it's difficult to make the right decisions or to have some challenges on your decisions. So I think it was good to have two great people that also they thought very different than me. Like I think the three of us, we are super complementary, but we are different, right? And I think it was good to have those three. But then we made basically like a lot of mistakes, iterations on the product, and yeah, I think that it's hard at the beginning to know exactly how the product should look like, what is going to be the best value proposition, basically because you cannot. I mean, the UX research that you're going to do, at least the UX research that we did, it was almost zero. We didn't have any data, so basically it was mostly about intuition. So I think that was a difficult part, but it went well. And then, of course, it's difficult to get fund, basically to get the funding in place. And at the beginning, it was fast to get those 30K, because what I did is, I think it's important when you're pitching investors, even if it's too early, to have something that is visual, because we already had the screens design. I put those designs in the presentation, so it was like the app was already launched, but it wasn't. I already had the screen designs, and so that's why we closed really fast those 30K. And then it was difficult to get the first seed round, that was 300,000 euros from a venture capital fund from Luxembourg called Mangrove Capital Partners. And raising money, it's always difficult. It's very difficult, and it was difficult to me to get a lot of no's, because when you fundraise, usually, I mean, of course, it's different if you are Facebook or many other companies at the beginning, but usually it's super difficult, and you're going to receive like 99% no's and 1% yeses. So it's hard, because it's something that you're putting a lot of time and efforts to it, and just receiving a lot of rejection, it's something that a lot of people is not used to. But and mentally, if you're strong, I think it's hard. So probably that's some experience around fundraising. And
Was the fundraising the most difficult thing for you, or was it really more kind of the, let's say, missing experience in applications or in that sort of area, where you didn't have any experience?
Yeah. But the thing is, for example, I think I'm more like a product guy. So basically, I like it. I like the challenges on the product. I like to spend hours and hours and hours thinking about the product, and talking with users, and even seeing the problems and thinking about the solutions. So I like to be involved in product, even during hard times. What I don't like that much, and usually that happens to pretty much all the founders, is to spend time with investors during hard times. And it's always going to be better, I think, just spend time in the product and with users than with on politics and strategy and negotiations that are related to if like having the money you need to to develop the product that you want, right? So I think for me it has always been. I mean, I think we've been successful, and we've been successful at fundraising, and I don't think I'm bad at talking with investors. Of course, we raised $45 million already, but I prefer to spend time with my team rather than with potential new investors talking about what we are doing, etc. Because it's just starting from scratch, and they need to understand everything, and sometimes they don't, so you're not explaining yourself correctly. So I think it was harder for me to spend a lot of time not on the business, but pitching to investors, and it's always the same.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And any recommendations or any experiences? How did you motivate yourself through this period? I mean, it must be tough to get 99% no's, and waiting for this one opportunity. If you're convinced that you have the right product, the right idea, how did you keep yourself motivated?
So there's always up and downs, and some days you're going to feel like what you're doing, it doesn't make sense because you are receiving a lot of no's. But then the next day you think that what you're doing is the best thing ever, and 1 hour later it's back to the same, right? So it's just like a roller coaster, and I think it's just you need to clearly define and understand why are you doing what you're doing, and if your thesis about your company and about your market and about your product, it's based on common sense, and it's not something crazy, and it's almost difficult to not believe it once you like deeply believe in your idea, in your product, and in the market. Then you can receive no's, but it's going to be difficult for you to stop. So basically, that's what happened to me, and what's still happening to me. Just I strongly believe that the market is huge based on macroeconomics and data. I think it's also common sense that that co-living, even if it's centralized or decentralized, is going to grow. I also strongly believe that we will see in the mid to long term rental market another Airbnb that hasn't been created yet. We can do it, or anyone else will do it. I think flat sharing is something that is just growing. So it's just difficult for me to believe that what we are doing doesn't make sense at all. And it's just a matter of how we do it and we prioritize and how much money we have and how many resources we have, right? So it's not a matter of if it's correct or not, if it's a matter of we can execute better than the rest or not. So because of that, I think I can go, and also my team, we can go through anything.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for those people, those few people who don't know Badi yet, maybe a few words about yourself. I mean, you've had a great startup period. You've raised now up to $45 million. Maybe you can explain a little bit what you do and where you are in terms of status of company.
Yeah, of course. So we focus on flat shares. So we have a marketplace where anyone with an empty room can post a room and find the right flatmates. So what we use is a verification system and also an algorithm. So everyone at Badi and every single user, it's verified and comes with specific information and also several pictures. So we can say that all the profiles have enough information that is needed, and so anyone can post a room and start receiving verified candidates with all the information needed that they can accept or reject those candidates. So if they accept the candidate, then they can start chatting about information about the flat, more pictures, documentation, and then eventually book the room through our booking system, which is an escrow payment system that allows the user to pay before they arrive, and then we hold the money 48 hours after the moving date, so that also the seeker, basically the tenant, can check if everything is as expected and correct, and also can have some time to know also more about the flatmates, and that's it. So that's the methodology, right? So in terms of supply, we have supply from different segments. It's from current roommates. We have supply rooms posted by landlords, by professionals, by family office, and even now by real estate funds. And on the demand side, we have students, we have landlords. We have students, we have young professionals, and also we have senior professionals. So the average age is around 32. And we're already operating in Barcelona, well, all over Spain, but mainly Barcelona, Madrid, in London, Berlin, and New York. But also we are growing organically in other cities like, for example, Mexico, in Lima, Peru, in Colombia, in Australia, in many other countries where you can also see active rooms on a weekly basis. And in terms of people, we are in the office 120 people. Well, right now 130 people. We have an office in HQ in Barcelona. We have also an office in London and in New York.
Sounds great, actually. I mean, seems like growing numbers. I mean, you mentioned it. It's metropolitan areas mostly. Is room sharing, is property sharing a metropolitan thing in your thinking, or do you think it's a global, universal thing, which actually will also go into urban areas?
I think sincerely that it's a global thing, but mainly needed in urban areas. And in the future, who knows if also we will see co-living or flat sharing in rural areas. But for now, I think it's mainly going to be focused on urban areas. I think right now it's growing those urban areas all over the world in cities where there's a lot of density: Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, London, Berlin, Amsterdam, New York, San Francisco, Sydney, Shanghai, etc., etc. And there's a huge way to go in order to fill all the necessities in those cities, and then in coming years we'll see. But I think for now it's mainly focused on urban areas.
Okay. I mean, the kind of platform you have, I mean, scale and speed is, of course, a really important factor. I mean, really covering the market. Competitors are out there, somewhat, Airbnb, of course, being one of them with a slightly different model. How important is it for you to actually really scale fast and build the momentum in the markets as you grow? As you said, I mean, it's a matter of money, of course, but how important is it?
Yeah, so at the beginning, I thought it was super important to go super fast. And what I realized is that it's more important to focus on quality and trust. And that's not fast. I mean, of course, you can do it faster than the rest, but it's not fast. So at the beginning, we thought that we just launch in every given city. We put some marketing in place, and that's it. And that's not how it works. Basically, a real estate or rental marketplace needs to have a lot of things in place. So at the beginning, you need to understand the market. So for example, London is way more professionalized than Barcelona or Berlin. So that means that the market it's full of professionals, and then you need probably to adapt the product for professionals. Then you need to take into account regulations in every city. Then you need to focus on quality, because you don't want a lot of listings being posted that they don't have nice pictures, that cannot be booked online, that don't have a high lister score. We developed a lister score based on different factors. Because if you have a shitty supply, then the demand will come, you will pay for that demand, and then they will think that your product basically sucks. And also, it's about trust. So usually in classifieds, what you see, it's everything, but you don't see trust. It's impossible that you trust the platform in order to do transactions, like for example in Airbnb. And it's because they don't do verifications, they don't have a moderation system like we do, they don't have algorithms in place, and basically the users are not verified as in other platforms, right? So there's a lot of fraudsters, there are scammers, there are duplicates, there are passive listings. So you need to take all of that into account when you start in any given city in order to grow fast, but lean, and also scale the quality. Basically, what we want is to have as much supply as possible with the best quality as possible, and that's important. So I believe that in any given city there's the biggest classified site, right? In Spain we have Idealista, we have Fotocasa. In London there is Sperrum. In US they have Craigslist and Thumper, and we don't expect to be to grow like more than those sites in terms of listings. What we expect is to have better quality, which is different. So I could say that yes, I mean it's important to go fast, but it's more important to offer the quality and the user experience that you want to offer, because it's a main differentiation of your product.
Yeah, I like that actually. I do believe specifically in times like this, trust is really a really important currency. People are careful and should be careful. So online platforms sometimes have kind of the the thought of not being trustful but fast, and if you think about Amazon, running recommendations, a lot of fake recommendations, it's hard to verify them. So I think it's really important for consumers and for people that trust actually becomes more of a stronger currency in any given online market, regardless of what you do. So I like that. Actually, it's a cool thing. But of course, you have investors. I mean, they also want to see growth, I suppose, and revenue. How tough is the pressure actually? I mean, you put yourself under.
Yeah. So I mean, in our case, I think we even so we put the same pressure on ourselves than the pressure that investors are putting on ourselves. Basically, all of us, we want. I mean, I believe also the board. It's part of the company, so I believe we are also in the same team, and I believe all of us we want to go fast and increase the revenue fast and have the growth that we expect, right? So, I mean, the last 5 years we have been growing more than 3x year on year, and that's our plan. But for example, in some cases, we needed, for example, that's an example, we needed to ban or delete maybe 40% of the supply that we had in one city because it was full of duplicates and scammers and fraudsters. So we needed to decide if we wanted to stop a little bit in order to have the quality that we wanted, because in the future that's going to be key, right? So I think it's important to have a short and mid-term strategy, but it's super important to have a long-term strategy, because then if not, you are going to end up probably as a classified site. So I think that's key. I think the difficult thing to do is to find the equilibrium between both things.
Yeah, definitely. I think in order to survive, specifically given times like this, where you have a lot of online platforms, it's easy to ramp a quick platform, but it's really hard to operationalize this and build a trustful business. Given that you need to scale it, I mean, the efforts you have to put in place, checking all those, landlords, making sure they're real, making sure, the experiences, are good, verifying all those recommendations. I'm sure, there's a lot of work to be done, that's why you need a bigger team. And, getting to that actually as an entrepreneur, probably the toughest thing is to get a good team, to have a good team. I mean, what to you are the key criteria for your team in order to excel as a team?
Yeah. So when we hire, so we're talking about our team. So in our case, when we hire people, we expect the technical aspect of the position and also the experience that comes with it, and it's acquired. It's already there. So that, for me, that is the obvious part. For me, there is something that is key and not like everybody has, which is passion and motivation for one, the vision of the company, and second, for the position itself. You can be highly motivated with the company but start in a position that you don't want or you don't like, or you can be working at a position that you love in a company that basically you don't love. So it's important to have both. And what I've seen is that, of course, you need to nail the experience and the technical skills for specific positions. But for me, it is key to see passionate people about both things, because then they will be able to adapt. They will be able to just go the extra mile. They will be able to learn faster, and also to be positive in the room. Because in a startup, there's going to be many times where things are not going to go as expected, and it's important that you have people that are passionate and they are willing to iterate fast and not to basically be positive, right? And so the attribute will be passion in this case.
Yeah, passion is cool. I mean, this is, I mean, you're Spanish, so Spanish people, at least the Germans
Yeah,
say Spanish people have passion by nature. So that's that's
yeah,
a very good criteria. Now, with your co-founders, with Pablo Alvaro,
yeah.
how do you guys actually, keep up with this type of development? I mean, you said you had no experience. You actually feel like you're a product guy. You're developing yourself. I mean, given the size and the growth of this business, I mean, you personally and your co-founders, you have to develop fast in order to educate and learn. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So can you repeat the question, please?
The question would be, if as you actually grow in this company, I mean, this company, becomes a really big company, a global company. You started off as a person who had no experience or no real experience, on this.
Yeah.
How do you keep up with your learning? I mean, how do you make
Yeah,
sure that
yeah.
you and your co-founder actually, scale, with the knowledge and with the experience?
Yeah, so there's only one option. I mean, you can learn a lot like fast if you can read a lot of books. You can go to the internet, but eventually, what you need, and it's the only thing that you can do, and you should do, it's to surround yourself with people with more experience. I think mixing talent with experience, it's critical. Talent. It's not always means experience. So I think talent is everywhere, and experience is not everywhere. And of course, experience is not cheap. So basically, you need both things. So basically, I think in my team, so for example, we have a product team that has a lot of experience. We have a CTO that came from Google San Francisco, with a VP engineering also coming from Google San Francisco. We have a chief data officer, VP data in this case also. So we have many people with experience in successful tech companies all over the world, and also in the board. I surrounded myself with people with a lot of experience. Of course, we have Spark Capital, which is one of the most successful VCs in US. Goodwater Capital. We have Mangrove Capital Partners in this case. We have, as board member, also the co-founder and CEO of Get Your Guide, which is a German company. Maybe you know them. Um, so I think it's mainly about surround yourself with people with more experience. So then, of course, you're going to fail sometimes anyway and make a lot of mistakes, but you're going probably to make less mistakes and you're going to fail faster and eventually get to the right things faster too. So I think that's key.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, it leads to the next question. Any good recommendations where you failed miserably and you learned quickly?
Uh, so I'm learning, and I've been learning a lot with like having interactions with external investors, and also having board meetings. So having a board meeting represents articulating what are you doing, what have you been doing the last 3 months, really fast, that like everyone needs to understand everything, and you should be able to answer any kind of question, and also articulate what is going to be your strategy moving forward, and also being challenged on everything you are doing and also anything that you want to do. So you should know everything that you are presenting, every detail, every number, everything about your strategy, and that helps basically with your learnings. I mean, and I think I've been learning really fast, and also my team to explain what we are doing on a monthly and recurrent basis in this case. Um, in terms of specific failures, I think, for example, so we are a tech company, and what we sell it's our product, right? So I think there's many things that we can do, many ideas inside our team, and basically a huge and long product roadmap, and with a lot of ideas, right? So how do you don't have enough time to develop everything. You don't have enough time to test everything. In fact, you have a short period of time that basically you buy with with money, and that money comes from investors, right? So basically, you will have around 6 months to develop new features that are going to have an impact in the next 9 months, and eventually then in 10, 12 months, you need to start fundraising again. So you need to decide what things and features and ideas to prioritize. And that's, I think, it's the key for success. What are you going to prioritize, and how you decide how to prioritize? So I think at the beginning, we were making choices based not on data, we could say, right? So we were making we were launching a lot of things, a lot of new features, etc., but not all of them, they were working. Right now, every single decision that we make, every prioritization that we decide we're going to do, it's based on data, on proper UX research, qualitative, quantitative, etc., etc. So we can know how much they're going to hit our KPIs, right? And I think that has been key. So at the beginning, one of my learnings was just be careful on what things you put your time and your money, and probably prioritize better.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, given the speed actually you're on, I think you have to be very clear about what actually is leading to decisions, and how do you actually correct them if they're not wrong, if they're not right. But I have a specific question now. We have a lot of listeners, mid-sized companies, and the situation in most larger cities is similar. A lot of companies are building innovation hubs or incubators, or launching digital units. That in itself is happening. What we see is the challenge that a lot of those people who are supposed to work there don't find homes, and they don't have homes to live in. They might have a great office, but the living situation is really not good. Can you foresee a service where you offer those mid-sized companies maybe bulk living spaces for young people, so that they can actually solve this problem for their employees, rather than the employees looking for themselves?
Yeah, so we're already starting to work with different partnerships with companies, right, and enterprises. So basically, what we want to do is to offer the supply that it's most interesting and near, of course, specific companies, jobs, offices, to all their employees, right? And that's exactly what you are defining. So basically, we're already talking with several businesses in order to offer a specific and probably more detailed experience to enterprises and B2B. This is something that I think is super interesting, and we're already doing.
Yeah, that's really cool, because again, those companies are growing, and I think the emerging problems actually grow as well. That people just don't find homes, and in case you want to keep those highly educated and interesting, young people, I think you have to think much beyond the working place. At least this is our experience. And I mean, the drastic situation in Silicon Valley shows an extreme, but Barcelona is a tough place to find homes. In other big cities, actually reasonably priced homes, so to speak. So I think it would be great actually to have an offer where those companies can actually do more for their employees, and maybe differentiate themselves from larger companies, enterprises who maybe can afford to pay higher salaries, but don't worry about so much.
Okay. Yeah, I get it now. Yeah. No, I think that's super interesting. So basically, I mean, I think Badi, it's interesting because it helps unlock more supply. So also eventually that helps also to maintain the prices, because if you have more supply in a supply constrained market, basically then you're helping to maintain some prices in place, right? So we do that as with our marketplace, and also we do that with Badi Homes. So Badi Homes, it's basically a pilot that we did, and now has become something that is pretty relevant also to us, and I think it's going to be super interesting, which is we work with real estate funds to basically become their property managers. And we do a 360 service so that we can offer the best quality supply, and at the prices at the specific prices, so we can also control those prices, right? So I think with Badi Homes, this could be interesting to work with companies and enterprises in a system or a model where they can pay a percentage of the rentals to employees. And Badi also can help with all that supply, right? So I think that could be super interesting.
Yeah, I think that might be a great differentiator on all three sides, for the employees, for the employers, and for you as well. Given that you offer so much more value in the chain. I like that, actually. It's a cool thing. I hope it goes broad and it helps solve some of the employment problems we have in these larger cities, which are exploding right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. In fact, I will talk with my team probably by the end of this call.
Yeah, we can give you a few references for companies, actually, and I think we can help them, solve a problem and differentiate themselves. And this podcast is supposed to be positive. Now we live right now in times which are really challenging, and I think I agree with you, at least from what I read from you, that we emerge stronger after this crisis. But now we're in this crisis. Can you describe what this right now does? I mean, how do you deal with it? And of course, it's very counterproductive to your business model. But how do you keep up?
Yeah. So basically, when investors and population they don't know what is going to happen, and if there's many things that are hurting its business and they don't know how much time is going to last, then everything becomes more complicated. And basically, what you need to do, which is what we are doing now, also more if you're a startup, it's just decrease costs and super fast, and probably have a plan to increase your runway for at least maybe from 10 to 12 more months than expected. So in our case, that's one of the things that we did. It's just prepare ourselves for the worst. Although I believe that in the next 2 months we'll see that we are starting to also feel like our way to normality, basically, in Spain. But of course, it's a weird situation because no one has studied in economics or social aspects how a global pandemic is going to affect the economy and the population. So basically, it's just so uncertain that you need to be prepared for the worst. So basically, what we have been doing is just preparing ourselves to have more runway. And in our case, again, we have like the entire country has stopped. So we are just working from home. And right now, basically, what we are doing is doing all the kind of things that usually we don't have time to do, which is more time to think about the strategy, more time to think about the product, start already just writing code to develop all the things that were in a roadmap, so that when everything becomes normal again, we can go faster, right? So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did, of course. I mean, it's tough as we're all in this, and that's the interesting part. It's not affecting one or the other. It's actually affecting everybody. And as tough as it is, but one thing, there's also good things, happening when we send our employees to home office. The development team, it's 50 people. They're more productive, working from home than working in the office. They're creating 20% more code and high quality code. So
yes,
some of our employees actually seem to work better. Of course, that doesn't help on the revenue side, so to speak, on the outside side. But to your earlier point, now is actually the time to take a step back and improve product and write code and be better. When the market kicks off again, and we're all in digital, which means, if there is one thing the world needs now, is more digital, because it might not be the last time such a pandemic actually is hitting the world. So we better be prepared.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation. So that I hope, of course, we get through this. But as we talk about digital, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, where do you use digital assets or digital things, and where do you actually cut off? Where you say this is enough is enough? I mean, how immersively are you using digital assets?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, I love technology, and I always try to be aware of new technologies and new launches and new features of different apps, and so I mean, basically, I love it. But I think I also I believe that physical and personal face-to-face interaction it's highly needed in a company. So, for example, in my case, I wasn't a I basically I wasn't pro work from home, and right now we are in a situation where the entire company is working from home, right? And of course, there's good things about it, which is of course well, we have more time to just think, basically, and less meetings in place. And then it allows us to do things that probably we didn't have time to do. But I think physical interaction it's key if you want to grow personally and also professionally. I mean, eventually, and also this is something that I tell to people at our team. So work from home it's good, but it's good when controlled. And I think it's impossible to grow from a professional point of view if you are not going to interact with the people in order to articulate specific messages, to communicate, to lead, to motivate. So I think that part is key. And also, I think it's pretty the same for social interactions. So I think my line, if I need to draw a line, it's when I feel that I'm not taking care of my personal relationships, like with friends, family, or whoever, right? And this, I think, sometimes it becomes clear when you're not taking the proper time to take care of your relations. And I think personal relations need some. You need to take care of them, basically, and you need to spend some physical time, face-to-face time, and quality time. And I think that's highly needed. So probably that's my draw line. But I've never had problems because I think I'm a person who personally has a personality of um, of just having those physical interactions, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a balance. Probably, working from home also requires that you have some experience, some work experience, that you also have a leadership style in your company, which allows, people to manage at home. But to your point, I mean, I've worked, years and years, in global jobs, being on the road, being on my own. You become lonely. I mean, that's as tough as it sounds. I mean, you're missing these interactions. To your point, the learning experiences in times where, I would say the last 10 years were probably the most exciting times of my life, because, whatever develops, everything seems to be possible. And I think this is something where, as a team, you can just do anything together, which an individual probably cannot do. So to your point, I think it's important to be together, but at the time, right now, I think you also need to find a way of coping with it. And we have a lot of clients, and also a lot of listeners, by the way, who are also against home offices based on different reasons. But it's interesting when you talk to them now, how much they appreciate technology, because it keeps the company going. So it's interesting when things when there's no alternative, you move quickly in your head, and make things happen. So that's what technology can really help us, as long as we don't lose sight of what you just said, the social aspect, the family aspect, etc. So I think it's an interesting time also, where there's a lot of learning, which we would not have, without this crisis.
I agree. It's I mean, I think we're going to we are living like technology and digitalization of also the professional sector, probably we are like we are experiencing what life maybe could be in the next in 20 years, but in a month basis. So it's just, I think that this global pandemic is making us just experience what will be to like everyone to work from home, etc., and having those digital interactions instead of physical interactions. And well, I think technology I mean, it's being key right now, and I think it's key for these kind of situations, and of course many others. But I think physical interaction is always going to be needed, and at least my point of view and my way of living and motivating the team, it's always going to be if I can face to face. So we do weekly stand-ups, and every weekly stand-ups I go there, and then all the team is in the office. Of course, the rest of the office is going to be online always, but at least this face-to-face component, I think it's key to maintain it.
I agree, but it's a nice, interesting thought. That we're living basically the situation, today, which we will be facing in 10 or 20 years. Yep. I think that might well be true, because a lot of companies right now realize that they don't have a digital value chain, that they just really depend on the physical interactions only. And that this could be the end of your business. If you don't, I mean, if you're actually, trade fairs, if you're organizing trade fairs, like the Barcelona mobile trade fair, for instance, I mean, if you don't have any digital equivalent where you actually have a value creation model, you're dead. You're dead. And that's really interesting thought, where I think 2 months ago, nobody has had this thought, in such a drastic way in their head, that value chains.
Correct.
Immediately change.
Yeah, it's speeding everything.
That's true.
Correct.
Now let's go to the last part. We're always asking, for inspirational, ideas and inspirational sources. Where do you educate yourself? I mean, do you have some good reading recommendations or anything where you now that we have a bit more time? I mean, where do you inspire yourself? Read, and get information from?
Yeah, so it's a mix of several channels. One, of course, it's books. The other one, it's internet and Medium. The other one, of course, it's the people I know, or some people that I don't know, and I try to know. And also these days, it's the first time I member right now of a masterclass, and I think it's super interesting because there's super interesting people there. And last video that I seen, or last lessons, was a lesson from Bob Iger, the former CEO of Disney, and I think I already even bought his book, and I think he could be one of my inspirational sources from now on as a CEO. So I think there's different types of profiles. There's like pure entrepreneurs, like Elon Musk, like many others, right? But I think then there is some people that they have a profile more CEO profile, we could say, right? So I think it's a little bit a difference. Then we see some people that they have both, which is like they are great entrepreneurs, but also they could be great CEOs of huge corporations. But yeah, so I think those channels probably right now, and Bob Iger, it's definitely one of them. Elon Musk, it's also another one. I mean, I read a book about Tesla, which is called Inside Mode. And I think it's a pretty easy read, and I think it's interesting not because of the technical stuff that you will see in the book, which is not technical, but because of it's kind of the situations that you may live as an entrepreneur, and when you read these stories about Tesla or many other companies, you see that it's not only not going to be easy, but are the ones who just live and survive through very difficult times, the ones that eventually succeed. So I think that's also important.
Yeah, great recommendation. Thank you. That's pretty cool. I mean, Elon Musk. I mean, you can think about him what you may, but I mean, the guy has balls, and it's unbelievable, what he has moved. I mean, being one guy with a great team, it's unbelievable actually. And more to come, I suppose. So really interesting. Bob Iger, also a great icon. I think he's leaving the CEO role now, but I mean, he's a fantastic icon of leadership. So two good recommendations. Is there where can people get in touch with you if they want to drop you a line? I mean, is LinkedIn a good place to meet and talk to you?
Yeah. So on LinkedIn, for example, Carlos Pierre, and or through my email, which is carlos.badi.com.
Very cool. We leave our guest the last and final thought. So whatever you want to leave, the audience, it's your time.
Okay, so well, I think based on the current context and situation, which is something that we weren't expected. I think like sometimes startups, they go through difficult times, but difficult times are not coming to everyone at the same time, and maybe not at the same level in every startup, right? But I think this situation, it's hitting everyone at the same time and at the same level. So I think it's a good time to just become super efficient, just be innovative, and I think learn a lot. I mean, I think it's important to grow professionally and personally, to go through great times, but also to go through difficult times. And I think, of course, this is difficult times, and it's not going to be easy, but it's an opportunity to grow professionally and personally. And I think I'm learning a lot of things as a CEO, and I think Badi can come out of this as a better company, and even can help to succeed faster if, of course, everything returns to normality soon. So just keep it up, and and believe in your idea, and have the passion to just go for it.
Very cool. Carlos, I thank you very much for your time, and wish you, personal health, but also, all the best for Badi, and, keep up with this great work. And, I'm sure we hear from you, and hope you get through this crisis in a good shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Wir hoffen, dass auch für euch einiges an spannenden Informationen und auch ein echter Mehrwert dabei war. Gerne gebt uns eure Meinung zu den Themen, gebt uns Feedback auf allen Kanälen. Die sind in den Shownotes wie immer verlinkt, da findet ihr auch die relevantesten Infos von dieser Episode. Und dann freuen wir uns natürlich, wenn ihr nächste Woche wieder einschaltet. Vielen Dank.